So the next thing I just wanted to show you is dead space when it comes to tubing. And dead space in tubing is really the amount of volume the tubing holds itself. And you can find any of the dead space. You have to know the brand and the products that a hospital is using. But it's really easy. If you look on the packaging, you will always see the actual dead space. So this has what they call a priming volume of 5.5 mils, which means this entire tubing, this is just a little extension tubing set, but it applies to every tubing set that is in the hospital. It tells you how much volume is actually retained in that set itself. And so what I wanted to show you is, and what I did is I filled this, and I've kind of got a mess here. I've got just some saline all over the table, but this tubing right now is filled with saline so that you know, there's fluid all the way in there, and it took 5.5 mils to fill it. And what's important to realize and to be aware of dead space is when you give, oh shoot. I guess I have to put it over here. When you give a drug in here, and again, the green shows you actual drug. When you give a drug, and I drew up 1 mil. Let me take the clamp off of this, put it on here so we don't leak all over. So if I give 1 mil, look how far that drug has gone. Clearly, if this is attached to the patient, the drug has not reached the patient. And why is that? Because you have 5.5 mils in this entire tubing set. And so the only way that you can make sure that that drug gets into the patient, you know, if there's nothing running through this line to push that drug through, you know, you could give a dose of morphine and they're gonna say, yeah, I'm still in pain, because clearly they did not get that drug. It's still stuck in the tubing. And so that's why we usually would give what's called a flush, which basically, oh, and I didn't draw enough up in here,
Could use the
basically is drawing up a solution. Usually, you know, a saline flush is typically what they would use, but you would attach, and in order to flush this through, you would need 5.5 mils because that's the volume there. And so you would have to attach your flush, sort of like a chaser, I guess you could call it. But then you can see as I'm flushing this through, the drug that was sitting in that tubing is going to finally go through and reach the patient. So again, dead space, or the priming volume, is the volume that it would take to fill this entire tubing. And there are some drugs that we give where we will actually send extra in order to fill that tubing. Partly because if they're going to change out this tubing, you want to make sure that all the drug gets through before you say, okay, we're going to change the tubing out and throw that away. Because if you did, look at right now, there's still drug in there. So you have to make sure you give them enough volume in order to push it through. So that's kind of the, like I said, priming volume, or the dead space that we would have in tubing itself, that you would have to account for in giving drugs or dispensing drugs, is to know, do they need something to account for their priming volumes.